Welcome to Round Hill Radio, the podcast from Round Hill Community Church. Through our conversations, we discover the holy in the ordinary, find moments of grace and peace, and redefine what we're talking about when we talk about faith.
Welcome to everyone. I'm Ed Horstman, the senior pastor at Round Hill Community Church, and we're really fortunate to have a wonderful guest for our podcast episode, Rachel Kornfeld, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish Family Services in Greenwich. So, Rachel, I want to say a very warm welcome to Round Hill Radio.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate you having me on today.
It's great. And I've been very fortunate to get to know you as we've been working together and thinking together about how to respond to a humanitarian crisis, which is the process that's been unfolding now for a time to welcome Afghani evacuees to the United States. And I want to thank you for the incredible leadership that you have shown and taken in helping us in Greenwich in particular. To be a source of welcome for at least some of those evacuees. We hope we're going to be able to provide them with a sense of home. So before we have our conversation about that, I wanted to ask you, Rachel, a little bit about Jewish Family Services and its history, just to give us some of that background for our listeners.
Sure. It's nice to be able to tell the story because we really are sort of returning to our roots. JFS of Greenwich was created in the early 1980s to serve the influx of Russian refugees that were coming over from the former Soviet Union. And so for, upwards of 25 years, JFS was known in the community for helping to resettle Russian families. And many still live here today and still keep in touch with JFS after all of these years. Over time, as that program sort of dried up, which happens for different populations, and that's a good thing, the focus shifted. And so JFS was kind of this quiet little social service agency filling gaps in services in the community. And when I got here in 2019, I tried to make it less quiet. And that's how we're here today, I guess.
Well, so in terms of your arrival, of making things less quiet, of course, you're arriving just about the time when the pandemic is starting, or right around that time. So how has that affected the work of JFS, the global pandemic?
It was an incredible time to be newer to the Greenwich community. I've lived in North Stamford for 12 years at this point, but my entire professional career has been in the South Bronx in New York City. So it was definitely a change. But I have to say, I think the pandemic sort of propelled everything forward in the way it needed to go. We saw needs in the community that were present before, but then obviously exacerbated by job loss and mental health issues, physical health issues, everything that came along with COVID-19. So I have to say that it was a learning experience, but a wonderful one. Our clinical and psychological services grew exponentially. So now we're serving upwards of 400 people in the greater Greenwich community, providing psychotherapy and psychological services. Our immigration services have expanded. So we help those who maybe don't have the finances to hire an attorney. So we help them fill out their applications towards citizenship. And then something I'm very proud of, in addition to our supermarketing for seniors, which we're known for, we were able to take advantage of funds from the town. And we've had a families affected by COVID-19 transition program. We call it FACTS. And we've had that since the early stages of the pandemic, for which we've been able to help over 75 families manage food insecurity, emergency financial assistance, housing issues, job loss, so job coaching, and mental health resources. So, yes, from something awful, much good has come.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful array of work. And I guess just moving from your affiliation with JFS maybe to a more personal question. So what is it that drew you personally to this kind of work, which it sounds like you've been doing for some time? You've been very committed to the common good in a lot of different ways. Can you say what it was that inspired you to move your life in that direction?
Sure. It was pretty obvious, I think, from an early age. I'm the child of a school psychologist and a geriatric nurse. So when I was younger, I grew up watching my mother make Thanksgiving meals for my dad's, families in need at his school. I would run around town in August every year. My father would go to every store to get all of the deals on school supplies. So
Oh,
back then it
wow.
was like 5-cent notebooks and things like that, but he would buy thousands of them. So then for September, all of the students, in need would have school supplies. So watching that growing up, it was instilled in me. I remember when I told my dad I wanted to be a social worker, he just double checked on that and he said, "You sure? You sure you want to do that?" But they were always very supportive of it. My family was the one that always had some random person that my sister and I didn't quite know. Maybe my parents didn't either at the holiday table. Uh, so you can see how that happened early on, and it's continued.
Yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's great. Well, there are so many people who are fortunate you've made that decision. And I guess I
Mhm.
would now identify that group as all of those Afghani evacuees who are going to be coming into our state. We understand that there's about 600 who will be looking for a home,
Mhm.
55,000 across the United States as a whole. So it's really a staggering number when you think about the lives of each individual in that group and what they have experienced, what they've lost, what they're hoping for. So, Rachel, help us a little bit in terms of our understanding of how JFS became involved in this process and what you're hoping
Mhm.
to accomplish with local organizations in the coming months to resettle Afghani evacuees in our area.
Sure, sure. So, knowing that JFS was created to serve refugees many years ago, when I heard about the crisis in Afghanistan, of course, I started to look into it and see if we had opportunities to assist in some way. And at first, we actually were hoping to assist with some of the resources we already had, such as mental health resources and emergency financial resources. And we had offered that to SERI and IRIS, which are the two refugee resettlement agencies in Connecticut, who are
Mhm.
amazing and do this all year, every year.
Right.
And At some point, and we were excited to be able to support in some way. And as a smaller social service agency, we have that ability to pivot. We have an incredibly supportive board who really want to meet the needs in the community as they arise. It
Hmm.
happened over COVID, and they were happy to join in to support Afghan evacuees. It just sort of the stars aligned when HIAS, which is the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, reached out to all of the JFS affiliates across the country and said, "We really need you to step up. We need you to become temporary placement agencies, and we'll provide a slew of resources and supports, but we need you to do it like right now."
Right.
And yeah. There wasn't really a thought process on that, or time. But you know, the nice thing about it was, for me, there wasn't a question. I thought to myself, if my board agrees with this, we're good.
Hmm.
Um, we did that knowing we had very little staff, and we weren't sure what we were getting into. But again, knowing that we were under the auspices of HIAS, which is an incredible, resettlement agency, known, around the world for their services, and also how we started, which was through HIAS and the Russian
Sure.
refugees. So we just moved forward. And slowly but sure, actually, it's not slowly but surely. It was actually really quickly that
Right.
we jumped into the process. Something that I have to say is that everything that's happened, I really do think it's happened for a reason, and that the stars aligned here because of where we are. So it's not just that we are in Greenwich, which is an area that's full of resources and an incredible community, but also the state that we live in.
Hmm.
Connecticut is, I have been blown away by the response at the state level. The governor made it very clear that Connecticut is going to be a welcoming state to
Hmm.
at least 600 of our Afghan neighbors in need. And I think it's important for people to know that the state is really rallying to provide incredible support and services, not only to the agencies like JFS and SERI and IRIS, but the individuals. So they're really trying to pull together resources to make this transition, as easy as possible.
Yeah. I'm really glad you gave a shout out to the little state of Connecticut, the land of steady habits. We can
Hmm.
surprise ourselves sometimes, right?
Right, right.
Right? So suddenly make these dramatic decisions to be a place of great welcome and refuge. I'm really proud of the state for a lot of reasons these days, but that one especially, right, as you're pointing out.
Right, absolutely. And then take it from there. I was introduced to your congregation and several others. So that's why I continue to say that, the stars have been aligning, so we can do more good.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to reflect back to you a little bit of your comment about it, the pace at which things have moved.
Mhm.
It's really moving very quickly, right? And we're thinking that there could be a family moving into our area as soon as the first week in December. Is that the idea? And if so, in terms of the timing, if you can describe that a little to us, and also what do we know about our Afghan neighbors who are going to be coming into our midst, or how much do we know?
Sure, sure. So this has been a fascinating process for me. I've spent over 20 years in human services. I've never experienced this type of program. And yeah, I think I had mentioned to you that when we had to assure cases, that I was literally clicking with the mouse on
Yeah,
different families, right, and different
right.
individuals. And it's a bit of a surreal experience to know that whomever I clicked on, their life
Mm,
was going to change and that
mm,
they were going to be a part of the Greenwich community. I also felt, an incredible sense of peace and comfort knowing they were coming to us so
mm.
that they would be okay, right? Surrounded in this group that you've created over there at Roundhill Community Church. So, those that are going to be coming to us right now, we have 21 individuals that we expect to arrive probably in December, hopefully between December and February 15th.
Hmm.
But we do expect our first family, likely of 7, to arrive early next week. We get very little information because of the enormity of this situation. Typically, we would have more information up these. We basically know their ages, their sex, their marital status, and the language that they speak.
Hmm.
Sometimes if there are, some medical issues or whatnot. But that's really all we know. I have to say, though, because I'm new to this and I'm not used to getting, a really detailed case profile, just to be able to know their ages, and sexes for, the children, and the teens and things like that, it gives us the ability to at least prepare somewhat
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
and have resources available that are age appropriate.
Yep. And you're
Mhm.
providing such amazing resources for groups like ourselves because we're some of us are brand new to this process. We're very
Mhm.
fortunate that in the team or the co-sponsor group that we've formed, that we do have some people who've been part of the resettlement process in the past. But can you say a little bit, Rachel, about what those co-sponsorship groups do? I mean, how do they
Mhm.
organize themselves, and what specifically are some of the resources that JFS will provide to them so that they can accomplish their work?
Sure, sure. So, what's been very interesting is that I have been very much a student over the past 30 days, doing a whole lot of listening and absorbing information.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no shame in being humble, and just listening in many meetings to learn from those who have done this before. We've had a lot of assistance from IRIS, which is Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services, and they're an incredible organization based out of New Haven.
Mm-hmm.
And they really have been instrumental in helping us to learn the process, particularly the co sponsorship process.
Yes.
And so the JFS Rising Hope volunteer group co sponsorship will be a bit of a hybrid. It will be as much of the formal process as we're able to put together in the short amount of time that we've been able to work together. And also, JFS is really going to be heavily involved because we need to learn the process as well.
Mm-hmm.
We have quite a few families that are going to be coming in a very short period of time. And so I think there's going to be some formal groups that are going to take on, individual families.
Mm-hmm.
We're very happy that Round Hill Community Church has offered the cottage on
Mm-hmm.
campus also transitional housing, which is an incredible gift. So our families can come and have a warm, comfortable place to stay for a few days or up to 2 weeks if needed, while we find them more permanent housing. But everything in between is going to happen through this group of volunteers, through this co-sponsorship. So everything from making sure that there's clean linens to food in the refrigerator and hot meals, driving our new neighbors wherever they need to go, securing placements in school, driver's licenses, you name it. And all of this will be done hand in hand, with our JFS case manager and myself and our volunteers.
We were especially delighted to hear that you had brought on board a case manager. I mean, I think that's a really, for those who've worked in the resettlement process in the past and have not had access to that resource, I know that really brightened their spirits, and it gave a lot of the rest of us a huge boost of confidence. I should say that our Rising Hope group consists of Round Hill Community Church, the First Presbyterian Church in Greenwich, the North Greenwich Congregational Church, and the Greenwich International Ladies Group. And we did a brief check-in yesterday, and we're going to be checking in again today, but we have, we think, pretty close to 60 volunteers who have stepped up. And I think that speaks to the comment you made at the very beginning of our conversation. There's tremendous goodwill in Greenwich to want to be able to receive these new neighbors into our community, and we've certainly seen that as we've gone about this process of recruiting volunteers. I think everyone that we've talked with has this mixture of, kind of gratitude and terror, wanting, being really excited about doing this, but also thinking, wow, are we really up to this? And, what would you say to those in the group who are feeling a little wobbly at times about this, eager to be part of it, but also they have that question in the back of their minds? Any words of assurance or comfort that you would extend to them?
Absolutely. So this is one of those things where I've been saying there's something for everyone, right? When it comes to any good deed, everybody has a different level of comfort. And so there are those who like to go and shop for the food. There are those who like to cook it. And there are those who like to deliver it so they get that one-on-one contact with the person in need.
Sure.
And yes, so if we have people at every stage just like that, that's, I think, what's most important. That we want everybody, part of why I do what I do is because of the joy that I get from helping others. And I look forward to all of those in this volunteer group experiencing that, to know that they had just a little piece, a little part of really helping to change the trajectory of lives, because that's what we're doing.
Right. Yeah, that's really helpful. And the other part of this, which is still really hard for me to grasp, but this is how IRIS has done its work. They really encourage and expect those who arrive into our state to be really kind of moving towards self-sufficiency in a fairly short space of time. And I hesitate to say self-sufficiency because we all depend on a network of communities, right, for our fullness of life. But what is the time frame roughly that people are expected to follow as they get a sort of a firm grounding under their lives?
Sure. So officially, the highest Afghan Placement Assistance Program, for which we are under the auspices of, is a 30 to 90-day program. And so we technically need to provide services and get them as settled as possible during that time. Of course, as a social service agency, we are here in Greenwich. We are already providing a slew of resources and services. And that's why, it was a no-brainer for me and something that was really feasible for us to manage, that we are here to help these families as long as they need. From examples of other JFS affiliates across the country, the JFS up in Boston was very active in helping with some Syrian refugee resettlement. And so we took a lot of their knowledge and information, and, knowing that their families are coming back to see them doing very well, but still involved, 4 or 5 years later. So I think the extent of resources needed will be minimized after a very short period of time. But of course, we want to be here for them socially, emotionally, in any way that we can for as long as they need.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Well, Rachel, I was in on the initial Zoom organizational meeting that you arranged with many people from our community, and I think the
Mhm.
thing that struck me, two things struck me about your leadership that day. First of all, you were really determined, and it was very clear that we were going to reach out to these new neighbors, and this was not a question of whether or not we were going to do it, but this was
Mhm.
something we were going to do. And the other thing that I really appreciated was your non-anxious presence. This is what a friend of mine once said, if you can't create a non-anxious presence, at least create a less anxious presence. So,
Mhm.
I think whenever we're embarking on an endeavor of this magnitude, it's natural that we feel a little bit of nervous hesitation, but you really had a way of drawing us all together in a spirit of confidence. So I want to thank you for that and for all of your leadership, and just wonder if you have any closing thoughts for us as we go forward from this podcast and to the work of actually receiving these new neighbors from Afghanistan into our community.
Sure, sure. If I can tell a very quick story about a program from a former life. I was a school administrator in the South Bronx for many years, and we had an unaccompanied minors program in my school. We had 75 children in our school, ranging in age from, I think, 1 year to 18 years. And there was one day where it was a particularly tough day with my students. And I remember I saw somebody walk in with a little baby on their shoulder, maybe a 2 or 3-year-old. And I thought, oh, that must be their daughter. And I said, oh, your daughter is so adorable. And she said, no, this is one of the unaccompanied minors. And all I could think of in that moment, especially as a mother of young children myself at that time,
Yep.
was this was just a little baby who just wanted to be comfortable with their mother or their father or their family members.
Yep.
And so, when I think about that, back to that moment and the emotion that I felt then, it was just a human. It was just a little teeny human right there. And so I hope that more people will join this effort in any way they can. But I hope more than anything that our new Afghan neighbors will be viewed just like that, just as another human like you and I, who feels pain and has emotions and needs, and that they should be treated accordingly. Because we're very privileged, not by wealth, but just to have a safe place to live, education, to have family, to have the comforts that we do. And so my hope is that we can use some of that to extend to these our new neighbors. And anybody who might be interested in joining, I would love to speak with you.
Rachel, thank you so much. Blessings in every way for you and Jewish Family Services, and we look forward to working alongside you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening. Round Hill Radio is brought to you by the friends and members of Round Hill Community Church. For more information, please visit roundhillcommunitychurch.org.